Welcome to Pulp Era Story Reviews, Episode 7. Today we'll be looking at yet another Robert E. Howard story, Wings in the Night, featuring my favorite Howard hero, Solomon Kane. Now, it's actually a little bit difficult for me to pick a favorite Howard hero because, well, they're all pretty much awesome, aren't they? But Solomon Kane kind of edges out the others for me. If you take a look at Howard's other heroes, let's take Conan the Barbarian, for instance. He was a barbarian, and no matter how much of his life he spent in civilized lands and how adapted he became to civilized ways, his barbarism always informed his actions and his attitudes towards others. Other Robert E. Howard characters, like Bran MacMorton, were very similar. And then there were those like El Borak, who was born in a civilized land, but chose to move to a more barbaric area of the earth, because those were the sorts of people he related to, and that was the sort of life he wanted to live. Solomon Kane, on the other hand, was a Puritan, born in Elizabethan England, and it was that Puritan attitude towards life and towards right and wrong that informed his actions. Now, like other Robert E. Howard characters, he had a wanderlust. He was never happy staying in one place. And he had a love of a good fight, although, unlike Conan, Solomon Kane would never admit that to anyone, including himself, and he would claim that he would only fight when he had to serve justice or bring vengeance down on evildoers. And that was just fine, because he brought a lot of vengeance to an awful lot of evildoers. Now, Wings in the Night was published in the July 1932 issue of Weird Tales magazine. In it, Solomon Kane is doing basically a walkabout across the continent of Africa. He runs into some cannibals who want to have him for dinner, and he has to make a run for it. He ends up entering a remote valley to escape the cannibals, and once there, he finds a native tied to a stake, dying of horrible wounds. Kane tries to comfort the dying man, who gasps out, the wings, they come again," before he finally dies. Well, it's not long before Kane discovers what that means. He's attacked by a winged man, and in a really awesomely described battle that takes place in midair after the winged man grabs up Kane and lifts him up, Kane manages to kill it, but he's horribly wounded in the process. He's found by the local villagers, who take him in and treat his wounds. And they do this because they are a kind-hearted people. But they're also hoping that Kane will stay and protect them from the other winged men who are still in the area. These winged men have been tormenting them for years. They see the villagers as a food source. And they're not above swooping down and snatching up a random villager, including small children, if that's what they can get, and flying off with that person to have them for a snack. Well, Kane does not want to spend the rest of his life in this remote village. He wants to keep traveling, but it's his fighting skill, his sword, and most especially his pistols are the only thing that can keep these winged men at bay. In what may be Kane's single most awesome moment in all the original stories, he says, "Yet I will stay here in Boganda all the rest of my life if you think I'd be protection to the people." He's also, by the way, theorized that the winged men are the basis of the legend of the Harpies from the Jason and the Argonauts myth. So I'm going to refer to them as Harpies for the rest of the story because that's just easier to say than winged men. Well, Kane spends a while hanging out in the village, but his presence there simply isn't enough. The Harpies simply gather their forces and attack the village en masse. Kane manages to kill a bunch of them, but they wipe out the village and kill everyone there, including the village headman, Guru, whom Kane had become very good friends with. So Kane is now the only survivor, and the winged men, the Harpies, are still on the loose, and all the villagers that he had sworn to protect were now dead. He had failed. Well, he becomes obsessed with the idea of wiping out the Harpies. He wants revenge for the villagers, although if you asked him, he would have said that he was looking for justice, and he probably would have honestly believed this. So he rigs up a trap to lure all the Harpies into the same location where he can destroy them in a very clever way, and what we have is a really, really good ending to an epic Solomon Kane story. Wings in the Night is probably my favorite Solomon Kane story, featuring my favorite Robert E. Howard hero. It's got great action scenes, which is typical of Howard's stories. He always wrote a great action scene. And this one has really great insight into the mind of Solomon Kane. We really understand how this man operates and what it is that drives his life, what it is that makes him do the things he does. He's really a tragic hero, and he may be the closest thing to a true tragic hero that Robert E. Howard ever came up with. And that's really why I like him best. That's why if I had a chance to have him over for dinner, well, I probably wouldn't, because he'd just be awful gosh darn depressing to hang out with. But I do enjoy reading his adventures. Well, that's it for this time. Hopefully I'll have another video review soon. Until then, you can visit me at my blog, comics, old time radio, and other cool stuff.